Book is life. Book is hope. And book is light for the future.
Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rahman, live from our Islamabad studio. Today we'll be talking about this proposal by the US President Donald Trump regarding the Middle East peace process. Now, he says that this is a solution, rather a deal of the century. But at the same time, when you talk about the Palestinian authorities, I'm referring to the chief negotiator of the Palestinian conflict, or I'm talking about the President, Mahmoud, they all believe that this is going to be the fraud of the century with the Palestinians. So what sort of a proposal is this? What is the future of Palestinian conflict? Because whatever we have seen so far, as long as we look at the total tenure of Donald Trump, you'll see that the first visit of Mr. Donald Trump was to Saudi Arabia, and right from there he went to Israel, and then we got to know onwards that Jerusalem has been declared as the capital, and then now moving on, more areas are under conflict. You talk about the Golan Heights, you talk about the Gaza Strip, you talk about, it seems as if they're being squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. Now, what is the future? What is the future of the Palestinian children? Now, this is what is the topic of our today's program. Let me introduce you to our panelists, and then we'll start a formal talk. We have with us on my right is Dr. Nazir Mahmood Saab, senior columnist. Dr. Saab is also a senior journalist. Thank you very much. And we have with us Professor Dr. Rifat Hussain Saab, a known strategic analyst, is also an IR expert. Sir, thank you very much. We have with us Air Vice Marshal retired Faiz Amir Saab, who's a senior analyst and the former head of the Air University Islamabad. Sir, thank you very much, AVM Saab. Nazir Saab, first of all, sir, proposal after proposal. The conflict is still there. The life of the Palestinian is just as bad as, maybe worse than those living in Kashmir, I would say. But the West comes up with an idea. Most people believe, a lot of Western analysts also believe, that this is a move just to make sure that Netanyahu wins the next election, sir, and he could form a proper government. Your take, sir.
So, as you rightly pointed out, ever since Trump came to power almost 3 years back, he has done a couple of things that go straight in favor of Israel and against the interest of Palestinians. Number one, he accepted and recognized Jerusalem as the capital, legitimate capital, and in fact shifted the embassy there also.
Yes.
And then secondly, he stopped millions of dollars in aid that was given to UN for Palestinians. So he just simply stopped that, and that was being given by the United States for past 50 years at least. So these were two major things. Then after this, what he did, he tried to compensate for that, and for that compensation he established a team to develop a plan, which was dubbed as the deal of the century, though Trump himself didn't call it, but some media people called it. So who were these people who worked on this plan? There were 4 or 5 major people, and most of them were Jewish, and one was Coptic Christian. No Muslim was there. One was Friedman.
They were not even consulted.
They were not even consulted. Friedman was there, and his own Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, he was part of that plan development team, and Jason. And one Coptic Christian was Dina Habib, who's from origin from Egypt. So these 4 people essentially worked on this plan. None of them is a political scientist. All of them are either business dealers, just like Jared Kushner is a businessman.
He's a
real estate dealer.
tycoon there. So
and Jason is also a lawyer. So none of them was a political scientist or who knew about history or whatever. So they just wanted to give something to the world and saying that we want a solution.
Is it a cushion given to Netanyahu, sir?
It will be given. So what is the plan? Let me first talk about the plan itself. There are 2 parts of the plan. One was the economic plan and the other is political plan.
Correct.
Economic plan they launched in June last year, and that also Jared Kushner presented in Bahrain, of all the places in the Gulf. And in that plan they promised that $50 billion will be given, and that will change the face of Palestine. But if you go into the detail is that half of that amount, $25 billion, will be given to 3 countries, that is Egypt, Lebanon and Jordan, and 25 billion will be given to Palestine if Palestinians agree to it. And out of that also, it is not a grant. 80% of it is loan, and remaining 20% is either private investment, and that will also be given by the Arab countries, not United States itself. And
so these are all promises primarily.
And all promises. But interestingly, when this plan came up, Saudi Arabia was the first one to welcome it, and they said that this is very good, and now this is the time to agree to it because this will change the fate of Palestinians. Now Palestinians are very reluctant. Why? Because number one, they have not agreed to it, they were not consulted, and essentially it is a surrender document, because in the political plan what is going to come, the first condition will be accepting Jerusalem as the capital,
which they will not.
Yes. And then there is no mention of the 2-nation solution. That is probably the best solution.
Yeah.
And thirdly, the last point that I am going to make is your question about Netanyahu, the timing. Why suddenly, the economic plan was presented in June, and based on that, he was expecting that Netanyahu would win elections in September. Because as we know that now the third elections, general elections, will be held in Israel.
Yes.
The first one last year in April, Netanyahu was unable to get a majority. Then after 5 or 6 months, second elections in September. Yeah. And now the third elections will be held in March. So to bolster and support Netanyahu, this plan is being presented now. So Netanyahu is trying to get leverage from it, because if this plan is presented, and though Palestinians will not agree, but if they agree, then this will be a major boost for Netanyahu. So
that is
the situation.
Primarily.
Yes.
So moving on now, sir, couple of points here. If you remember, sir, there were 2 big deals. Could have been 3 if Kashmir was involved, but these were the promises of the former President of the United States of America, Mr. Barack Obama, sir. He totally agreed with this 2-state policy, 2-state solution, or 2-state deal, whatever you may call it. And then he also, in his tenure in 2015, we saw this P5+1 being finalized. But later on, what all happened, we all know about it. But even now, sir, so whatever the Americans were thinking earlier has been set aside, and there's a new formula, a new peace deal. And if you look at the history, sir, Donald Trump is not offering a deal, he's going to implement whatever is brewing in his mind, primarily, sir. How far do you think this is going to affect the actual Middle East peace process, sir?
Well, first, a couple of things. There are two Security Council resolutions, namely 242, which was passed after the 67 war, and the 338, which are the bedrock resolution passed by the Security Council unanimously, and they call for the return of all territories that were occupied by Israel following both the wars 67 as well as the 73 war. Now, if any solution has to be found to the Palestinian problem within the UN framework, to which all the great powers were a party, because these resolutions were passed unanimously, then it has to be within the framework of these two resolutions. And what do these resolutions say? They call for the return of all territories annexed and occupied by Israel, even though the language of both the resolutions does not call Israel an aggressor, but the fact is that they recognize the fact, and there is the ICGA judgment that you cannot annex a territory which is disputed or which belongs to a particular state. And you know that the Israel annexed the Golan Heights, they occupied western bank of Jordan, and they occupied the Gaza Strip.
Yes.
And they are still maintaining a notional concept of Palestinian Authority being relevant in these contexts. So what I am saying is, and now coming to the plan itself, interestingly enough, today when I was coming for this program, I thought that I should get some idea of this plan. And interestingly enough, June 2016, there was a group of Israeli scholars which were called the INS scholars. These are the members of the Israeli think tank, and they began to work on this plan. And their plan is very interesting, because it says that according to their plan, the proposal is that Israeli security will be guaranteed, borders of the security, which means that Israel will have complete control not only over its borders, but over the surrounding areas which will constitute ultimately the Palestinian state, number one. Number two is that establishment of a Palestinian state after 4 years, if this plan gets accepted, which is to be
It's going to take another 4 years.
Another 4 years, and then Jerusalem would remain under the Israeli control, and the plan does not recognize a Palestinian right to return. Now, these are the four critical issues.
These are the actual issues, basically.
These are the actual issues. So, if this plan gets implemented or gets accepted, so then which means that the Palestinians' plight would remain the same as it
even will get worse
last 72 years. So these are some of the key elements of the plan. But since I said, and it's very interesting that this plan was leaked to the American press, and people came to know about this. So if this is the thinking, then additionally, Manzar Saab has very rightly pointed out that the people who were behind behind the planning, which led to the adoption of this plan. So those do not represent any of the interests of the Muslims or the Palestinians. And it's in that context that the Palestinian president has appealed to the international community that they should categorically reject this plan, because this plan is actually an eyewash. It's
now let's see how the Muslims react to it, rather how the OIC reacts to it, and then we'll have to see what is the point of view of the Russians in it also, because that is also going to play a very important role. Now, sir, it is also believed that Palestinians are threatened because they believe that their sovereignty is going to be compromised, sir, if this deal takes place. Secondly, sir, now since they call it the fraud of the century, let's throw light on that aspect, sir. Now, Dr. Saab has mentioned about 4 major key issues, and if they are, it's a walk over for the Israelis primarily. So what is left behind for the Palestinians to sort of negotiate or talk about, sir?
For any agreement in Middle East, which is lingering along for the last 72 years, 73 years now, probably both parties have to make fundamental agreements, fundamental changes to their previous stances. Now, in this particular stance, the agreement or what the proposed solution has not been shared with the Palestinians. It has definitely been shared or maybe drafted by the Israelis or with the help of the Israelis. It has not been shared by the Palestinians. So it just flies in the face of facts that probably if they expect the Palestinians to accept this thing, I think they have already indicated their refusal or their rejection of the entire plan. Now, but what is fundamental in it? After the 1973 war and the UN resolutions that demanded Israelis to return the West Bank and all the occupied territories, there was a peace plan, a roadmap to peace plan in 2003, which US along with 4 other allies had drafted and presented. It was regarding two-state solution in Palestine, where the Palestinians would have had their own state in a 3-phase plan. Now, after the 73 war resolutions, the next thing to discuss was that roadmap, and that became the benchmark for any discussion between two parties. From now onwards, this peace plan will become the benchmark. So that is the major
What about
change.
the previous deals or the commitments?
So
all null and void, sir?
That is the stand. If might is right, and there has been a resolution from the UN Security Council as late as 2016, UNSC 2334, which was approved by majority of people, 14 versus 1 abstention, and it called for stopping all the settlements in the occupied territories since 1967. So if as close as 2016, just 4 years back, the Security Council asked for stopping these settlements, it means the world, the major powers and all the Security Council members have a frame of mind which is totally different what is being presented today. So what you can summarize is that this particular proposal or this particular solution is not so much about an agreement as it is about providing support to Netanyahu at this time, because look at the timing also.
Yep.
And look at the timing of the impeachment of the President Donald Trump. So it is not so much about the solution, but as much it is providing us a support to Netanyahu so that he wins. And when he wins, obviously
But these would become the lead stories.
So when he wins, Trump wins. Now, Jared Kushner has a family relationship with Netanyahu. And today I was just looking at their relationship, and the Israeli newspaper, which ran a story maybe a little back on the relationship, the family relationship between Netanyahu and Jared Kushner, had taken off that story from their net.
Are they closely linked, sir?
They are related.
Okay.
And when Mr. Netanyahu visited last time New York, the United States, he stayed in the Kushner's house.
Okay.
And
So
he
they're
slept,
pretty close.
And he slept in Jared Kushner's bedroom. So that is and actually Jared Kushner is an Orthodox Jew. And he and his
And these
father
things do matter, yeah?
He and his father have been funding the settlements in Israel. So if that is the kind of conviction you have,
So he's definitely biased.
so and that is and who runs now? Look at this thing. Who runs the campaign for President Donald Trump? Jared Kushner, with the help of the APAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee. So
There you go.
the link is so dense, so thick, that to expect them to do anything that favors the Palestinian in the remotest manner, by an iota,
That would be
I
a
think
mistake,
that would
basically.
be
Absolutely.
over expectations.
Now, Mahmood sir, over here, the role, for example, the role of Saudi Arabia, we have talked about it. I mean, that is going to definitely be inclined in one way or the other for the Israelis, though they say that this is going to be the ultimate solution. Obviously, along with them, the G6 countries, most of them. And then you will see the role of the Arab League, which is again under the influence of Saudi Arabia, even OIC for that matter. So do you see somebody speaking other than Turkey, Malaysia, or maybe Pakistan for them, sir, from the Muslim world? Or maybe Iran, obviously?
Interestingly, this time also when Donald Trump accepted the shifting of capital from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, Western countries were not very keen towards that. That means that even G6 and other Western countries, they also have serious reservations. When 3 or 4 major steps that Trump has taken, interestingly, Saudi Arabia and some other Muslim countries have been more supportive to Trump and to Israel in comparison with some Western countries like Germany and France.
International visit as a president of the United States of America, he went to Saudi Arabia. And right after that, he went to Israel, right, sir?
Yes.
So obviously, he had taken into confidence the royal family.
Yes.
Simple as that.
Yes. So, Western countries, especially if you look at the European Union, they have not been very forthcoming in supporting Israel as much as some Muslim countries led by Saudi Arabia have done. Now, Saudi Arabia, what it has done, a couple of things recently. Recently means in the past couple of years. For example, 2 years back, Saudi Arabia allowed the use of airspace of Indian airline going to Israel. Previously, it was not allowed. Now, 2 years back, it was allowed, and now Indian airplanes fly directly using Saudi Arabian airspace go to Israel. This is one. Secondly, as I said that when last June, when this economic plan was presented, again Saudi Arabia was the first one to immediately declare that it is a very good and it should be accepted. So with this kind of attitude, I think that Palestinians will be in a very difficult position because they don't have any major support from other Muslim countries. As you said, OIC consists of 57 member states. 53 are Muslim majority and some other members are also there, but none of them have been very vocal in condemning and supporting Palestinians. So Palestinians have been left to their own devices, which is not good. Now coming back to this plan, if this plan is somehow accepted, what are some more points of this? The promises that he has made, Trump has made. One important offer that he is making is right now, as we see that Gaza Strip and the West Bank. These are two distinct.
Yeah, they'll be joined by a tunnel.
Yes, not tunnel, by train, and the train will pass through Israel. So now this is just an offer. Anytime if Israel wants, Israel can disconnect that. And then there are some other promises of some building construction, for example. So kind of peanuts they are offering, and in return they are demanding a complete surrender, accepting Israeli sovereignty, and no two-state solution is there. Now coming back to the support, from where Palestinians will get support, I don't see that there is any major support either from Muslim countries, so-called Muslim Ummah. Western countries also, they are not, they will not go against ultimately against Israel or America. At the most, what they will do, they will keep quiet.
Sir, most of the regimes, I don't know, don't want to name them, but in that particular region, most of the Muslim countries around Israel,
yes,
they seem to be subservient practically, sir, to the American establishment, basically.
Yes. So this plan is, as rightly pointed out, this is just an eyewash. It will not go anywhere. It is just, the purpose is twofold. One, supporting Netanyahu, and number two, deflecting the attention from Trump's impeachment.
Dr. Saab, now we're talking about Iran also. Obviously, there's a conflict going on between the Americans and the Iranians, and there are certain areas where obviously the proxies are taking place. Palestine is one area, Syria is another, Iraq is another for them, Yemen for that matter, sir. Now, since General Soleimani has been taken out, sir, do you see this further this issue further escalating in that region, sir, in particular, what would be the role of the Iranian proxies out there, sir? Do you see this conflict lingering on further, these forces entering, having issues, firing a few rockets, and then we'll see the Israeli bombardment? I mean, similar, exactly?
Well, Faisal, there are two things which are very interesting about this plan. One is that the Hamas's role has been directly pointed towards that Hamas will give up all the infrastructure that they have built, including their ability to fire rockets into Israel. So this is part of the plan.
Absolute surrender.
Absolute surrender, number one. So that takes care of the Iranian effort to use its proxies to undermine or to support the Palestinian rights to self-determination. Number two, it's very interesting that the plan does not talk about the dismantling of the Israeli or the Jewish settlements on the West Bank. It says that part of this population, which they have identified the number also, because I have all the details of the plan, they have identified only 10,000 Jewish settlers who are known amongst the settlement community as the hardliners. So only those will be asked to leave, but the others, the Jewish settlements and their further consolidation will remain in place. Now, the question that you had posed, what about the roles of Iran's role, and ever since 1973 war, we had the formation of a rejectionist front. There was a group of Arab and Muslim states who were deadly opposed to the existence of Israel, because Israel was not willing to entertain the possibility of a two-state solution. So they were saying that if you are going to unilaterally expand your frontiers, continue to occupy the Arab lands, then we are not going to be party to it. Now, who were the members of this rejection front? One was Iraq, the other was Syria, and the third was Iran. Now, you know what has happened to Syria, and you know what has happened to Iraq, and how Iran has been contained, particularly from exercising its influence. So the Americans and the Israelis see a great strategic opportunity for themselves to sell this plan, which is, as I said, that it's a non-starter, to sell this plan to the Arab world in the name of peace or in the name of the
Sir, Iran at some stage, you think this is going to be a very interesting offer in a way also, that Iran might surrender on certain, well, for example, I mean, you talk about the nuclear plan. The overall power of Iran is going to be reduced, sir. Their influence is going to be under some sort of a check. The most important part is that Iran, do you think the Iranians will compromise?
I think in principle Iranians will never compromise, right? Even under the Shah's rule, even prior to Islamic Revolution, they always wanted, even though they had very good relationship with Tel Aviv, but they always advocated the Palestinians' right to self-determination. So I do not think that after the Islamic Revolution, after the outbreak of Islamic Revolution, Iranians will compromise this, but Iranians will have no choice, because they will be the only lonely voice of resistance which will speak on behalf of the interests of the Palestinians. So you can draw your conclusions, because as I mentioned that there has been a disintegration, and the Arab countries also do not want a Palestinian state nearby, because they think that Palestinians have two assets which no segment of the Arab population has. One is they are highly educated, they are highly entrepreneurial, and the third is they maintain a very good population rate of growth. So these countries fear that if there is the establishment of the Palestinian state next door in the Arab lands, whether it's a mixture of West Bank or Gaza Strip, even if you give them a piece of territory, this state is going to survive itself, because, and then the last thing which is very important is that under this plan, the right to return to the Palestinian territory has also been denied thoroughly. which means that all the Palestinians, wherever they are living, wherever they are scattered in the Arab countries, they stay put there. So this plan actually contravenes every principle of
That's what I've understood, Dr.
just
Saab.
solution as envisaged by resolution 242 and 338.
Now, AVM Saab, this seems to me like a hostile takeover, sir, rather than a solution. This is like an absolute takeover. I mean, what is the future of the Palestinians now? I mean, if you expect them, I mean, you can curtail them. They have already been under extreme miseries. I mean, look at their life. Every time, Dr. Saab, you are very right. I mean, you talked about the education, that they're more or less like Sri Lankans in that way. Every time the F-16s would take off from Israel, sir, they would drop bombs on their hospitals, on their universities, on their schools, colleges, libraries. You know, very technically chosen targets, I would say, sir. Just, I mean, the way they are going after their culture and everything. I mean, after maybe 20, 30, 40 years, nobody would remember that. Now, sir, solution, I mean, this is not a solution. Look at the Western power, sir. This seems to be another conflict happening very soon, sir.
Actually, in the Zionist mind, this is the only solution. Because Mr. Trump has said in a recent statement that he expects Netanyahu to implement this particular agreement in next couple of weeks, I mean next weeks. What does that mean? Does it mean that he's going to actually legally annex those lands? That is what the plan is, that the Jewish government of Israel is going to announce annexation of all the lands that they captured in 1967, and even in Golan Heights they've already done that. So I think the only solution, they have said that they will give a fait accompli to the Palestinians while the Arabs are on their side, while the Arabs will not raise a hue and cry, and probably that's the only solution that they have. Now, as far as the American people are concerned, if you look at if you read the mind of the Zionist establishment that has been influencing the American decision making since 60s and 70s, you have seen a very, I mean, you must give them credit. You must give them credit that they've been working gradually on annexing whatever they had won and or were conquered or maybe occupied in 1967. And gradually they have worked, and you would probably, it becomes difficult to say that 9/11 was not a brainchild of the Israelis. So because that is what or they did not support it in any manner, because that is what has given them the leverage over the entire Muslim world, and that is what allowed the Americans to ruin and decimate the entire the Middle East. So what you look at is a very calculated plan by the Zionist establishment, both in Israel and the United States.
That was
they are
actually the
looking
change
at
of the century,
that they
I
are
would say,
looking at the larger Israel, what the plan is. But after this annexation, a very serious question will be, what is next? What is next? Is it Jordan? Is it parts of Saudi Arabia?
That would depend
Is it
on
Lebanon?
the future course of action.
No.
How things are disturbed in the region. Eventually,
So
some part
if
of
you-
Jordan, some part
if
of
you-
Iraq, some part of Saudi Arabia, you never
If
know.
you look at the plan that has been implemented, and if you look at their documents that have been, in their schools, they teach their children about the geography of that area by the older names, Samaria and Judea. They don't take their present names. They teach their children, because what you read about the statement by Mr. Netanyahu, that this is a plan has history behind it. So what is the history? He's not referring to the 1967, he's referring to probably 2000 years back, and ignoring everything that happened in between. So he's actually
That's
referring.
what Modi is also thinking about, the
Yeah.
greater India. Seriously.
That is it. That you got to read their mind. I mean, it's not conspiracy theory. It's being enacted. So what is next? Next is obviously beyond the 1967 borders, and it's Jordan, it's Saudi Arabia, it's Iraq, it's Lebanon. So it is. I mean, the question is.
So you're talking about a country size of almost India being placed in the Middle East,
and you might
under the supervision of the Americans.
And the what is going on in Saudi Arabia, allowing the nightclubs to open up, allowing the movies to open up, is
$500 billion the Crown Prince is going to spend on a city.
on a city. So
Imagine.
what is it? It is moderating the minds, the mindset of the Saudi Arabian Saudis, so that they accept what is happening across the borders. So this is a larger plan, and just before this plan, 3-4 years back, I won't blame Mr. Trump for annexing or for rescinding the JCPOA, but it is the Jewish plan that they were so against Mr. Barack Obama for this particular deal that they
Remember
had
what
planned,
Netanyahu did when he went to
that's
States?
and that's why Jared Kushner went all over the Middle East, to Jordan, to Saudi Arabia, to everywhere, to win their support,
Muster the
to
support,
all the Sunni states against Iran. And this hoax of Iran was created for this particular day when they would declare annex the Palestinian territories, and there won't be a single soul in Middle East who would oppose them. Now it is the European Union and the European members, they are planning to put out a statement supporting the two-state solution. They have actually announced that.
The situation is very fluid, very complex even now.
They're working on a resolution. What would be the stance of Pakistan government? That's a very important question. Where do we stand? And there have been
So we have always supported the Palestinians, but the point is now,
there have been talks about it.
I mean, on one hand, we want the Americans to support us on FATF. This is the name of the game now, sir.
So
and versus that, they would, that's how it works.
That is it. That is it. So there have been talks about what would be the response of Pakistan government when this plan is announced, maybe in a couple of days. So that's a point to think. And if we do not condemn it,
What
I
are
think
the choices we have, sir?
Actually, the next steps would be the Middle East again undergoing an Arab Spring, because the sentiments.
Which other countries? Are you talking about Jordan?
No.
Are you talking about Saudi Arabia?
You might see that. I'm telling you, because
Saudi Arabia currently is a one-man show.
The populace is not what the rulers are thinking.
Sir, if you remember, there was this statement of Donald Trump when he met Shah Salman. I said, we have taken care of you, we'll be looking after you. I mean, it was so funny. It didn't seem that he's talking to royalty. And then he says, well, we can take, we are supporting you, so nobody's going to hurt you or anything. But, if we take our support back, you'll be history in 7 days.
Yes.
So this is the attitude, this is what he thinks, this is how he talks.
Faisal, actually, after the annexation of the West Bank by the Israelis, after this plan is announced, any disturbance in Saudi Arabia and Jordan is going to help Israelis, because the news will be taken up by the Arab Spring in two major countries, and not by so much by the annexation. So you might be surprised.
You never know. I mean, obviously.
You never know that this is instigated. This is instigated so that the entire attention goes away from, as after the 9/11, the entire attention shifted away from Palestinian cause to the Afghanistan and to the Al Qaeda.
Absolutely.
Same thing is going to happen here after this is announced.
That's how you change the headlines.
After this plan is announced, you're going to see another major disturbance in Middle East.
And I'm sure, sir. So quick comment, sir, closing, and then over to you, sir. Dr. Saab?
There's one thing that I would like to read, is just 2 lines.
Sir.
The article that I was referring to, it says, to a great extent, many components of the Trump plan match the strategic rationale that informs the Israeli thinking. So that's a very telling statement.
That's the punchline, actually.
And then the second thing that I would like to say, that you must have read about it, that Saudi Arabia has allowed religious pilgrimage to Israelis. So there are telltale signs that the rejectionist front, which existed historically calling for the recognition of
Soon you will
Palestinian
be
rights.
seeing
And with regard to Pakistan's policy, Pakistan will be asked to either keep quiet
yes.
or not.
Do not say a
oppose
word against
or
it.
Do
Yeah,
not
do not oppose.
say a word against it, because then we will be under the threat of the Saudi Arabian and the.
Don't you think, sir, Arslan has already conveyed that message, sir?
Well, yeah, you can draw your
never
line.
know.
Turkey,
I would like to,
Malaysia.
in the end, I would like to point out, I think, a couple of things. One, need for changed leadership within Palestine also. You know, Mahmoud Abbas is already 85-year-old. And he has been there at the helm for over 15 years now. He is not allowing any young leaders. Palestinians are fairly young people, you know, the population is
Mostly,
increasing.
yes.
So there are many people, 40, 50-year-old, who can take over now with a changed mindset. So change in Palestinian leadership is needed. The same applies to Israel also. With the present leadership, now Netanyahu has been at the helm for long. There is a time to change there also. And thirdly, if there is a change in leadership in the if Trump comes again, forget about any solution. You know, this will continue.
Most likely
but
it's going to
but
come again.
Democratic Party has been slightly, you know, more positive. Look at Jimmy Carter, the first Camp David, that was Democratic government. Clinton, Oslo agreements, again Democratic government. Obama also
Yes.
tried to do it.
So you can't do much when the
yes,
Republicans
so
are in
slightly, Democratic Party is slightly better. So if these three things happen, and finally the fourth and last point, I am wondering what this 40 Muslim country army is doing there. If that 40 country army is there,
We need to do another show on that.
so
sir.
You might hear
no, sir,
something
it's
from.
an alliance of Muslim countries,
From
40 Muslim
whom?
countries.
You might
Against
hear,
whom?
hear something from
Against whom?
Turkey.
Against whom?
The
Malaysia,
Turkish-
most likely.
Malaysia, Turkey, and
Iran.
Iran. That's probably, and maybe a whimper from our side.
Yeah, let's see, sir. But anyway, this is not the solution, sir. This is a call for the worst case scenario. Anyway, Dr. Saad, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. ABM sir, thank you very much, sir. That's all we have for now. I'll see you again. Till then, you take good care. Allah Hafiz.